45 people who got rich overnight and lost everything just as fast. Winning money didn't ruin their lives. Losing control did. Because the moment the money arrived, something else quietly disappeared. The structure that had been keeping everything together. The limits, the friction, the small no that used to protect them from themselves. That's the part nobody prepares you for. Money doesn't just change what you can buy. It changes how people look at you, how often they call, how confidently they ask, and how guilty you feel when you hesitate. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. If you suddenly had more money than you'd ever imagined, would you trust yourself with it? Would you know when to stop helping? Would you know who was asking because they cared and who was asking because they could?
Or
would you confuse generosity with obligation, freedom with urgency, confidence with competence? Because for many people, the collapse didn't start with a reckless decision. It started with a reasonable one. Helping family, investing in a friend, buying something that finally made them feel like they belonged on the other side of the glass. And then another, and another, until the money wasn't solving problems anymore. It was creating new ones faster than anyone could keep up with. Relationships cracked under pressure. Trust turned transactional. Every decision felt heavier because now every mistake was bigger. The worst part, from the outside, it still looked like success. Today, we're opening the file on the strangest and most absurd experiments humanity has ever attempted. Not experiments in greed, but experiments in sudden wealth, handed to people without warning, preparation, or protection. Because money doesn't test your character, it tests your boundaries. And most people don't realize they needed boundaries until they're already gone. Fasten your seatbelts. Logic is about to die a spectacular death. Fact 1. When the check cleared before the habits did. The money arrived as a single number, large enough to feel unreal, small enough to think it would last. He told himself nothing had to change immediately, just a few upgrades, a safer neighborhood, a car that didn't feel like a reminder of the past. Friends congratulated him. Family relaxed around him. Bills stopped being urgent, which felt like freedom. Then requests appeared. Not demands, suggestions. Smart opportunities that sounded responsible. Helping felt easier than explaining boundaries he'd never practiced setting. The money didn't disappear in one move. It thinned, quietly, monthly. By the time concern replaced excitement, his lifestyle required an income the money was never designed to replace. The mistake wasn't spending, it was assuming comfort was sustainable without structure. Fact 2. When generosity became a contract. She shared the win immediately. It felt honest, grateful, safe. Within weeks, money changed how conversations began and ended. Help became expected. Declining felt like betrayal. Every no needed justification. Loans replaced gifts. Repayment was vague. Pressure wasn't. She wasn't reckless. She was loyal. She believed relationships would survive financial imbalance. They didn't. When the money ran out, so did the calls. The silence felt personal, even though the pattern wasn't. The collapse wasn't caused by giving too much. It was caused by giving without an exit. Fact 3. When investing felt like proving you belonged. He wanted the money to look busy. Sitting still felt irresponsible. So he invested with people who sounded confident. Friends of friends, familiar faces. Conversations filled with terms he didn't fully understand but didn't want to question. Questioning felt like admitting he didn't belong at the table. Returns were promised. Timelines were flexible. Trust filled the gaps where documentation should have been. When the ventures failed, explanations replaced accountability. The losses weren't dramatic, they were cumulative. The failure wasn't greed, it was mistaking confidence for competence. Fact 4. When lifestyle became a lock. She bought what she'd always postponed, a home that felt permanent, a routine that felt earned, expenses that assumed stability. The money wasn't income, it was finite, but everything around her behaved like it wasn't. Maintenance didn't pause, taxes didn't scale down, comfort required upkeep. By the time she tried to adjust, downsizing felt like public failure. The problem wasn't the purchase. It was building a life that required the win to happen twice. Fact 5. When saying yes felt safer than thinking. He agreed quickly to projects, to partnerships, to opportunities that promised growth but required attention he didn't have. Saying yes felt productive. Saying no felt like fear. Each commitment reduced his margin. Each obligation assumed the money was still there. When reality caught up, obligations didn't renegotiate. The collapse wasn't sudden, it was scheduled. The mistake wasn't ambition, it was believing momentum could replace planning. Fact 6. When advice multiplied faster than skill. The money made him popular with advice. Everyone knew someone. Everyone had a strategy. Each suggestion sounded reasonable on its own. He didn't lack intelligence, he lacked a filter. Without a framework, advice blended into noise. Conflicting plans competed for attention. He tried to honor all of them, diversify, stay liquid, take risks, play it safe, often at the same time. Fees stacked, decisions stalled, opportunities expired. The loss wasn't caused by bad advice. It was caused by having no system to decide which advice mattered. Fact 7. When help turned into dependence. She wanted to be supportive without changing relationships. She paid a bill here, covered a gap there. No one pushed back. No one said stop. Over time, emergencies became routine. Gratitude became expectation. Boundaries felt cruel once dependence set in. When she finally paused, the reaction wasn't understanding. It was shock. The breakdown wasn't generosity. It was failing to distinguish help from replacement. Fact 8. When taxes arrived after the celebration, he focused on the win, the headlines, the relief. The obligations came later. Different rates, different rules, deadlines he didn't know existed. He assumed the number on the check was the number he had. It wasn't. Penalties didn't feel punitive, they felt procedural. The problem wasn't ignorance of math, it was ignorance of timing. Fact 9. When status purchases set the pace. She upgraded quickly, not to show off, but to feel normal in new rooms. The purchases fit the moment. The payments outlasted it. Status has a maintenance cost. It demands consistency. When income didn't follow, pressure did. The mistake wasn't vanity. It was mistaking access for belonging. Fact 10. When no one said, slow down. He expected someone to intervene, an advisor, a friend, a professional. Everyone assumed someone else was responsible. Momentum replaced oversight. Silence looked like approval. By the time concern surfaced, habits had hardened. The collapse didn't come from one bad call. It came from no one stopping the sequence. Fact 11. When loans erased memory, not debt. He lent money to people he trusted. No contracts, no timelines, just understanding. That felt human. Months passed. Repayment didn't. Conversations changed. Awkward pauses replaced jokes. When he finally asked, the request sounded accusatory, even though the debt was real. The money didn't damage trust, the ambiguity did. Loans without structure don't preserve relationships. They suspend them, waiting for disappointment to arrive. The loss wasn't financial first, it was social. Fact 12. When trust replaced verification. She believed familiarity was safety. Friends felt safer than professionals. Recommendations felt warmer than documents. She signed because questioning felt rude. The deal failed slowly, missed updates, shifting explanations. By the time clarity arrived, leverage was gone. The mistake wasn't trust, it was skipping verification because trust felt kinder. Fact 13. When money made honesty harder. He noticed people telling him what they thought he wanted to hear. Praise increased, warnings disappeared. Money didn't buy loyalty, it bought silence. Without honest feedback, small mistakes compounded. No one wanted to be the problem. No one wanted to seem ungrateful. The collapse wasn't sudden, it was unchallenged. Fact 14. When family history met financial power. Old dynamics resurfaced with new stakes. Childhood roles reactivated. Guilt became currency. Saying no felt like rewriting history. She funded peace until peace required more funding. The loss wasn't money, it was clarity. Fact 15. When help turned into identity. He became the one who helps. The role felt meaningful, necessary, but identities built on giving are expensive to maintain. When resources thinned, the role collapsed. And without it, he didn't know who he was anymore. The mistake wasn't kindness, it was making generosity unsustainable. Fact 16. When comfort turned into commitment. He upgraded for peace of mind, a better place, safer surroundings, fewer daily worries. It felt responsible. What he didn't notice was how quickly comfort turned into obligation. Maintenance, taxes, insurance, repairs, costs that didn't care how the money arrived. The purchase didn't drain the account immediately. It locked it into a rhythm. The problem wasn't the house. It was the assumption that relief was permanent. Fact 17. When monthly payments outlived the win. She spread the money across manageable monthly payments. Everything fit the spreadsheet, until the spreadsheet outlasted the money. Subscriptions, services, financing plans, each one reasonable, together immovable. Cutting back meant admitting the win was over. She delayed. Payments didn't. The collapse wasn't impulsive. It was deferred. Fact 18. When one time, upgrades repeated. He justified each upgrade as singular. A better car, better travel, better tools. Each one reset expectations. Soon, normal cost more than before. Going backward felt like failure. The money didn't vanish, the baseline rose. Fact 19. When status required maintenance. Access changed circles. Circles changed costs. Keeping up didn't feel optional. It felt necessary to stay relevant. The mistake wasn't chasing status, it was underestimating its upkeep. Fact 20. When downsizing felt worse than losing. She saw the numbers early. Adjusting was possible. But downsizing felt like telling the world the story was over. So she waited. The loss wasn't financial foresight, it was pride. Fact 21. When FOMO turned caution into speed. After the win, opportunities seemed to arrive in waves. Deals closing soon. Trends about to explode. Friends saying, if you don't move now, you'll miss it. Waiting felt riskier than acting. He didn't lack caution. He lacked patience under pressure. Each decision felt justified by momentum. Each delay felt like failure. Losses didn't come from one bad bet. They came from a rhythm of rushed choices made to avoid regret rather than seek clarity. The mistake wasn't risk-taking. It was confusing urgency with opportunity. Fact 22. When fear of losing money caused losses. Once the balance dipped, fear took over. Every decision aimed to fix the drop. He chased recovery instead of stability, doubled down instead of stepping back. The money wasn't guiding choices anymore, anxiety was. The system didn't collapse from ignorance, it collapsed from panic. Fear narrowed vision, shortened timelines, turned complex problems into desperate moves. The loss wasn't mathematical, it was emotional. Fact 23. When confidence outran experience. Early wins felt validating. Luck disguised itself as skill. She assumed learning would happen naturally, on the fly, in public. Mistakes were reframed as tuition, until tuition exceeded the balance. The issue wasn't arrogance. It was assuming experience would catch up before consequences did. Fact 24. When money removed pause buttons. Before the win, hesitation acted as protection. Money erased that. She no longer needed to stop and think. so she didn't. Speed replaced reflection. Convenience replaced caution. The collapse wasn't reckless, it was uninterrupted. Fact 25. When every decision felt personal. Money tied identity to outcomes. Losses felt like judgment. Admitting uncertainty felt humiliating. Asking for help felt late. So she kept deciding alone. The failure wasn't independence, it was isolation. Fact 26. When spending became a reset button. Every time anxiety rose, spending lowered it. A purchase here, an upgrade there. Relief arrived instantly. Consequences arrived later. The money became emotional regulation. When stress spiked, the solution was transactional. Nothing looked reckless in isolation. Together, it formed a pattern. Discomfort triggered spending. Spending triggered new obligations. Obligations triggered more discomfort. The loss didn't come from taste. It came from using money to manage feelings it was never meant to handle. Fact 27. When temporary help never ended. He told himself it was short-term support, a bridge, a favor. But bridges don't collapse on schedule. People adjust to what's available. Requests became routine. Silence followed refusal. The cost wasn't just financial, it was relational. The mistake wasn't kindness, it was assuming gratitude would limit duration. Fact 28. When trust was given faster the second time. After one bad experience, she promised to be careful. Then a familiar story appeared. Similar pitch, similar confidence. This time felt safer because it felt known. The loss wasn't from naivety, it was from pattern recognition without verification. Fact 29. When lifestyle and generosity fed each other. Spending raised expectations. Expectations justified more spending. Helping others required appearing stable. Appearing stable required spending. The loop didn't break. It tightened. The collapse wasn't sudden, it was circular. Fact 30. When no single mistake could be blamed. Looking back, there was no villain decision, no dramatic error, just repetition, small yeses, familiar choices. The same logic applied again and again under new pressure. The failure wasn't ignorance, it was momentum. Fact 31. When money removed feedback loops. Before the win, mistakes were small and corrected quickly. Limited funds forced reflection. Time existed between action and consequence. After the win, that loop disappeared. Losses didn't hurt immediately. Errors didn't stop momentum. Without pain, there was no pause. Decisions stacked before lessons arrived. The system that once taught restraint went offline. The failure wasn't poor judgment, it was delayed feedback. Fact 32. When speed felt like skill. Quick decisions were mistaken for confidence. Fast moves looked competent. Hesitation looked weak. Money rewarded motion, not accuracy. Early success reinforced the illusion. Speed felt earned. Caution felt unnecessary. By the time results caught up, habits were already set. The collapse wasn't caused by ignorance. It was caused by acceleration without calibration. Fact 33. When abundance erased priority. When everything seemed affordable, nothing felt important. Without scarcity, choices lost hierarchy. Essential and optional blurred. Trade-offs disappeared. Money didn't create clarity, it dissolved it. The system didn't collapse from extravagance, it collapsed from indecision masked as freedom. Fact 34. When help arrived too late to matter. Advisors appeared after losses became visible. Professionals spoke once damage was done. Advice landed in a system already in motion. Stopping required admitting error. Continuing required hope. Hope won. The mistake wasn't rejecting help. It was waiting until help meant reversal, not guidance. Fact 35. When money outran identity. The win changed how they saw themselves faster than they could adapt. They weren't ready to be a steward. or a gatekeeper, or a boundary. Money arrived first, identity followed poorly. The loss wasn't financial, it was structural. Fact 36, when money exposed weak boundaries. Before the win, boundaries were enforced by circumstance. Limited funds made refusals easy. After the win, boundaries required intention. Requests multiplied. Expectations hardened. Each yes felt harmless, even kind. Each no felt like betrayal. Money didn't erode boundaries. It removed the excuses that once protected them. Without a practiced ability to say no, generosity became porous. Resources leaked in every direction, guided more by emotion than by plan. The collapse wasn't caused by greed. It was caused by boundaries that existed only when money was scarce. Fact 37, when confidence replaced checks and balances. Early success created a feedback illusion. Wins validated choices, validation muted doubt. Checks and balances felt unnecessary. Oversight felt insulting. Independence felt earned. Money didn't corrupt judgment, it insulated it. Without friction, errors traveled farther before detection. The system ran smoothly, until it didn't. The failure wasn't arrogance, it was unchecked confidence. Fact 38, when identity became attached to the number.
The balance wasn't just money.
The balance wasn't just money. It became proof of worth, of escape, of arrival. Every decision defended the identity the number represented. Losses felt existential. Protecting the self-image mattered more than protecting the capital. The collapse wasn't financial miscalculation. It was identity preservation at any cost. Fact 39, when control felt like ownership. He believed proximity meant understanding. Access felt like mastery. Money gave influence without expertise. Authority without fluency. Control felt real until outcomes disagreed. The mistake wasn't ambition. It was mistaking leverage for comprehension. Fact 40, when the money left before the lessons arrived. Experience takes time. Money removed time. By the time insight formed, resources were gone. The loss wasn't avoidable in hindsight. It was inevitable without preparation. Fact 41, when money arrived faster than learning. Skills grow slowly. Money sometimes doesn't. When wealth arrives overnight, there's no apprenticeship period, no low-stakes mistakes. Every error is immediately expensive. People assume learning will happen naturally, but learning requires repetition, feedback, and time. All things sudden money removes. The collapse didn't come from stupidity. It came from skipping the phase where mistakes are survivable. Money didn't give them a head start. It dropped them at the finish line without training. Fact 42, when structure was mistaken for limitation. Before the win, structure felt restrictive. Budgets, schedules, trade-offs. After the win, structure felt unnecessary. But structure wasn't the enemy, it was the scaffolding. Once it disappeared, decisions floated without anchors. Nothing stopped drift. Nothing slowed momentum. The loss wasn't freedom abused, it was freedom without rails. Fact 43, when success removed the right to be wrong. Mistakes became public. Consequences felt heavier. Admitting uncertainty threatened credibility, so errors were defended instead of corrected. Money raised the cost of humility. The failure wasn't denial, it was pressure to appear competent before competence existed. Fact 44, when recovery felt harder than risk. Once losses began, recovering slowly felt unbearable. Risk promised speed. Patience felt like defeat, so risk won. The collapse wasn't from ignorance of odds. It was from intolerance of waiting. Fact 45, when money revealed, not created, the break. Money didn't break them. It revealed the gap between capacity and responsibility. Without preparation, money becomes an accelerant, not a solution. The system didn't fail. It ran exactly as fast as it could. So far, none of these stories collapsed because of a single reckless moment. There was no dramatic explosion, no obvious villain. What we saw instead was something quieter and far more common. Money arrived faster than habits could adjust, faster than boundaries could form, faster than learning could happen. The first decisions almost always made sense. Helping family, investing in people who felt familiar, buying comfort that had been postponed for years. Each step looked reasonable on its own. Together, they created momentum without breaks. As the balance grew, friction disappeared. Pauses vanished. Mistakes stopped hurting immediately, which meant they stopped teaching. And with less feedback came more confidence. With more confidence came speed. With speed came repetition. What repeated wasn't stupidity, it was structure failing to keep up. Money changed relationships before anyone noticed. Advice multiplied. Silence replaced honesty. Generosity became identity. Saying yes felt safer than explaining no. The losses didn't arrive as punishment. They arrived as math catching up with emotion. What makes these stories unsettling isn't that the people failed. It's how familiar the pattern feels. Because nothing in it requires greed, arrogance, or bad intentions. It only requires sudden freedom without preparation. And that raises an uncomfortable question. If the only thing standing between stability and collapse is structure, what happens when structure disappears overnight? Because money doesn't just remove limits, it removes the small resistances that once kept decisions survivable. And once those are gone, life doesn't slow down to let you catch up. It just keeps moving, faster than ever. Maybe the real tragedy in these stories isn't that people lost money. It's that they lost it while doing things that felt human. Helping, trusting, trying, saying yes when no one had ever given them the power to say no before. We like to believe money is the finish line, that once you cross it, the hardest part is over. But money isn't a destination. It's a multiplier. It multiplies habits. It multiplies pressure. It multiplies every weakness that used to be small enough to survive quietly. When wealth arrives slowly, people grow into it. They learn where the edges are by bumping into them gently. When it arrives overnight, there are no soft edges. Every mistake hits at full speed. That's why these collapses feel unfair. Because from the outside, nothing looks obviously wrong. The decisions make sense. The intentions are good. The confidence feels earned. Until it isn't. Money doesn't come with warnings. It doesn't explain what it removes. It doesn't tell you that the limits you once hated were also protecting you. The budgets weren't just about control. They were about pacing. That friction wasn't punishment. It was feedback. We always reach for the impossible. But sometimes it's because no one stopped to ask if we should. No one stops to ask whether someone who's never managed abundance should suddenly be responsible for it. Whether freedom without structure is actually freedom, or just acceleration toward consequences you don't yet understand. The people in these stories didn't fail because they were careless. They failed because responsibility arrived before readiness, because money showed up faster than identity could adjust. And once money becomes the loudest voice in the room, it drowns out the quiet ones: doubt, patience, restraint, the very things that keep systems stable. This has been the Absurdist Files, where logic takes a vacation and reality writes the jokes. And in this case, the joke isn't that people lost everything. It's that we keep pretending money is a reward, when sometimes it's a test given without instructions.